MMA Now, powered by Film On TV Networks.
I'm David Kano with Film On TV Networks, MMA Now, sponsored by Gustoso Aguardiente Artisanal Rum. Live life with passion, live life with Gustoso. And right now I'm joined with MMA correspondent Brian Shepard and the one, the only, the OG of Hollywood, Pete Antico. Pete, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. You've been in Hollywood for over 30 years. Right off the bat, what's the biggest film you've ever been a part of?
That's a loaded question. There's been a lot of them. I specialize in the action field, like I did the Lethal Weapons or the films The Last Boy Scout or the original, as I said, of the original Terminator with Glenn Wilder, who directed the second unit, who actually was instrumental in helping Jim Cameron, put that vision, on screen, which obviously was one of the biggest films that Arnold ever did. So. That's awesome, but I actually love the Lethal Weapon series. I thought that was phenomenal. It was actually a buddy picture, and Mel Gibson and Danny Glover made it come alive. Those characters were phenomenal, and the action was off the hook, and which is a lot of fun. And I've done a lot of things like The Hunt for Red October or Ocean's 11, and my film career has been interesting and a lot of fun. I got to travel around the world and. See some of the most beautiful places and make films with some really artistic people. And I did Jurassic Park with Steven Spielberg, and I did a film called Motorcycle Gang, this little Showtime thing with John Milius, what in my opinion is one of the best filmmakers that ever walked the planet. He's certainly one of the best writers. He wrote things like Apocalypse Now. You might know that little film. And big film. Then Clear and Present Danger and. The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean for Paul Newman and Jeremiah Johnson for Robert Redford, where the first 20 minutes was silent. There was no talking in it. And it's interesting because when you look at The Remnant, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, there's some similarities between, that film and the original Jeremiah Johnson. If you watch it, about the original woodsman, trapping, dealing with animals in the snow, by himself fighting Indians and Aborigines. It was there are certain things that are very similar, but I thought that cinematic experience was brilliantly done by Inarritu and brilliantly done by DiCaprio and Tom Hardy, and films like that don't come along. It costs a lot of money in hard conditions, and you have to love your art and you have to love the stories that you tell to do things in that condition. And if you don't love it, then some people just do it for the money, but I do it for the passion.
I think the films I've been in.
And the money.
The films I've been in, maybe like less than 10 people have heard of the films I've been in, and you're naming all these huge movies.
Yeah, but, I came from an action background and an acting background, but mostly, I did a lot of, stunt doubling for some of the biggest stars in the world. And then I have stunt coordinated a bunch of films as well, which means that you're really the action director, and then acted in a lot of films as well. And then I'm producing a lot of things, and then writing. I'm writing a lot of things. And John Milius has been a mentor to me as a writer for the last 12 years. And I went to UCLA and their extension program. I think that's one of the best screenwriting programs in the world, UCLA, and a brilliant school for scribes. And then, but John Milius said it best. The best thing to do for as a writer would be to read the best literature or the most brilliant literature you can, and then write what you're passionate about.
So you mentioned you had a lot of stunt work. So what can someone catch you in that they may not know? That obviously may not know was you, but that you are most proud of.
Well, I did a film called 15 Minutes with Robert De Niro, where I was nominated for the best singer, like the gentleman across the street singing. No. I did a movie called 15 Minutes where I did a fight sequence tied to a chair, doubling Robert De Niro, and the fight sequence was with Oleg Taktarov, who was an ex-UFC stalwart great, and then the other actor, because they were both playing these Russian assassins. So I was nominated at the World Tourist Stunt Awards for Best Fight Sequence in a feature film and that was one of the best things because it was so difficult to do in the closed quarters and conditions, and it was really based upon cause and effect, and we used we used the props and the lay of the land to move the story forward, based in reality, not some unbelievable kung fu theater that happens in a lot of movies today where they just want to sensationalize things, but they're not really much based in reality. And I'm much more grounded in action that's based in reality. Unless you're doing movies like Crouching Tiger, where the whole style of the film is this flowing, flowery wire work where people are flying across the screen the whole movie. If that's the case, then you just follow the direction or the through line of that. But regular movies, you're seeing the Bullet, The French Connection, Ben-Hur, all these older films. When you see the action in them, they're basically cause and effect.
All right, let's talk a little bit of the Ronda Rousey documentary. News just broke about it today. You're a part of that.
Yeah, I produced that with my partner Gary Stretch, who's the director, and Gary was ex-WBC junior middleweight champ of the world, but a brilliant artist. He co-starred in Alexander, the Oliver Stone's film opposite Colin Farrell, playing a part named Clytus, and he just started a movie now with Pierce Brosnan directed. It's getting all kinds of heat at the South by Southwest called My Father Die. But he, in the fight world, I mean, he brought Freddie Roach from Vegas to Los Angeles, and Freddie trained him for his title fight against Chris Eubank in London.
But how long the Rousey? How long have you been working on this?
I'm giving you a little backstory
okay.
on how that happened. So about a little over 6 years ago, my friend Gene LaBelle, Judo Gene LaBelle, we were doing some one-off documentaries on fighters because we were fascinated with the psychological aspect of it. And I was talking to Gene. I was going to do an interview with him, and he said, "You got to meet this girl, Ronda Rousey." And I said, "She's going to be a champion." She was an ex-judoka, and she won a bronze medal. And he said, "I've only said it twice in my life, and this is the second time. You got to see this girl." So we went down to the gym. We were interviewing Gene. We looked at Ronda. We talked to her and her mother, Anne Marie, and started interviewing her. And we thought she was phenomenal. She had this fire in her. This is 2010. This is when she just made a decision to get into MMA. Had an amateur fight or two and won in the first minute. Very soft-spoken, very kind, great heart. And she had the fire. Like, she wouldn't take no for an answer. She never would stop. If you beat her, if she was training and she didn't learn something fast enough, she'd keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. She never would quit, never would stop. And after she was done training, if she wanted to learn some boxing, and like for 5 or 6 times at the beginning and at the end of 2010 and 2011 for a couple of months, Gary just showed her a few things. And after her entire workout, she'd go sit there with Gary for an hour and just beat the focus mitts and learn. That's how determined she was. She worked so hard. So I said, "Hey man, I really like her. Let's go for it." So we put our own money into it, and we followed her to Vegas, and she had an amateur fight and won that one in a record time, another minute arm bar, and first pro fight at the Braemar Country Club behind the scenes, and had a really interesting things that happened because her dog had bit her in the ankle, and she went and fought, weighed herself in, and went in and won that fight in about 28 seconds. And she's been a freight train through everyone. She won't take no for an answer, and she's really transcends conversations that are much bigger than herself. I mean, she's outspoken for equal rights, equal pay for women. She does some things, lots and lots of charity stuff too. Helps kids. Her mother has a gaming company that deals in kids' mathematical games, and she helps facilitate lots of really kind things on the planet for images and self-images for women, and a lot of things that people don't know about. So, she has this hard exterior, this hard shell, because I think she's just tired of all the press in her face about the same things all over the same questions every time she fights. But the bottom line is that underneath that hard shell that people see is a really kind-hearted, beautiful human being that people don't know. So the documentary we made was from 2010, like, to present, but we have all the early footage that no one's ever seen, that when Ronda Rousey was developing herself from the beginning in the MMA to who she is today. So it's really phenomenal. It's a really phenomenal look at someone who had nothing, who came into being the highest paid athlete in the UFC and on the top 10 highest paid women athletes on the Forbes list.
2 questions before we get out of here. One is, when does that movie drop? And second is, does Ronda get her belt back?
Ronda gets her belt back. Look, Ronda gets her belt back. Absolutely. Ronda will go armbar or knock somebody out. And I don't know who it is. Much respect to Misha Tate. Much respect to Holly Holm. But I just think that when she comes in, you know, with her game plan, because fighting is so mental. And it's very hard if you're fighting 3 times in a year. You're doing 2 or 3 movies in a year. You got press to do every week. You got everybody up your ass. And to focus on a fight, I just think, you know, my humble opinion is that you got to take the time just to focus on a fight and shut everybody out. Because when you got everybody doing that, if you're mentally not there, I mean, anybody can get beat. Conor McGregor can get beat. Muhammad Ali got beat. There is nothing to be ashamed of. An athlete is an athlete, and everyone's human. And the most important thing I want to say is that I have a big issue with is because of the social media and the press. What they do to fighters and athletes of all kinds is they objectify them, which means, you know, Ronda's on top of the world. Everybody's her fans, except when she loses, all of a sudden, I have read some of the most degrading, inhumane garbage from people posting, I wish you would get your head kicked in, die, rod, knock your... I mean, just all these horrifically, I want to say, evil, you know, things that lack conscience and self-awareness. You know, you have to remember, Ronda and every other athlete, whether it be Michael Jordan or Mike Tyson, they have mothers, fathers, and brothers and sisters, and they all love them. And not one of these people who are yelling at someone and calling them the worst things and wishing the most horrible things upon them would want that for their mother, father, or their brother and their sister. You have to remember, these people are all human beings. They're just a sport that we love to do, whether it be track, baseball, football, or basketball. But the fans and the people need to understand that we're one race, one human team, and need to treat people with humanity and the same kindness and consideration that they would want. And if people get pissed off at Ronda's outspokenness, they can get pissed off at Conor's outspokenness. The reason they come to fight and they come to watch these fights is because they want to see these people that are outspoken perform. They promote the fight. And that's the game. And there's a lot of people who have done it. Muhammad Ali promoted the game. You know, everything that he used to say at that time was brash. Everything that Ronda says was brash. Everything that Conor says is brash. There's been many, many athletes to do this. But remember, they're human beings. And if they were in your house, I promise you wouldn't treat them like that. You're in your house, they wouldn't say, you really hope that someone gets their face kicked in so they can't function as human beings again? I hope every one of those fighters that win, lose, or draw is healthy and is always healthy. Because
And when does the documentary drop?
It'll sometime before the end of the year.
Pete, thank you so much.